And so I've kind of gotten the ick. Hello, my gorgeous ones. Welcome to Alicia Budget Beauty. My name is Alicia. Here on my channel, I love all things affordable fashion and beauty. I do hauls, tutorials, reviews, all sorts of fun stuff. So if that sounds good to you, please subscribe, stick around, be a friend. All right, you guys, I'm excited. Today is a fun one. I got this idea from my friends Caitlin. I will pop her over here, and my friend Brittany. I will pop her over here. I believe Caitlin is the first one that came up with this palettes that give me the ick, or why certain eyeshadow palettes give her the ick. And hers was based more so on when she's using palettes, what's giving her the ick about them. Some of hers were, you know, things that she would avoid to not buy, but it was mainly like when she's using them, it gives her the ick. And Brittany's was more, I get the ick, so I don't purchase for these reasons. So today, I think I'm gonna do two different videos. Today, I'm gonna do these are the things about when I see a palette advertised, pushed, released, whatever, on social media, I get the ick and I'm not gonna purchase them. And then I plan on doing a second video of when I'm actually using a palette, something that gives me the ick, and maybe that's why I declutter it or avoid it in the future. So if you wanna hear 10 ick factors that are keeping me from purchasing palettes as of today, keep on watching. I forgot to mention, I'm also gonna be showing you guys palettes that I have in my collection that either represent the opposite of what I'm saying. Like, see, this is what I mean, like it needs to be like this, or maybe it is in my collection still and I'm like, this is what would give me the ick and I'm not gonna purchase it anymore. You'll see what I mean. All right, the first one is it doesn't inspire me. So I've gotten a lot pickier about what palettes I purchase. I go through phases where I'll go on a no buy and it'll be pretty strict for a while. Then I'll go on a low buy. Now I think I'm kind of at that healthy place where I just buy what I really, really want. And I know what does give me the ick and I steer clear of that. And inspiration definitely is a part of it. If it is a palette that I look at it and I'm like, that doesn't inspire me at all. Like, it's boring. I don't really know what I would do with that, then I don't want to buy it. I don't need it in my collection. A palette that shows the opposite of that I do have in my collection is the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Sickly Sweet palette. When I talk about being inspired by a palette, I mean a palette like this. And this is one, it was in another video of palettes like I didn't know that I would love so much, that really exceeded my expectations. I won this in a giveaway from my sweet friend Jen. And this, as soon as I got it in my possession and started playing with it, really started to inspire me. So I will say sometimes you don't know that you're gonna be inspired. When I first saw this, I didn't think that I was, but now I kind of know to be a little bit more open about that because I had never really put deep shades like these here with pastels. And as I started playing, I realized like, oh my gosh, you can transform the deeper shades by mixing in the pastels. You can really make the pastels pop in a unique way, pairing them with the deeper shades. It absolutely inspires me, and that's what I want to feel when I see a release. I'm like, does that inspire me? Will I be inspired to actually get that out and use that palette? So that is number one ick, it doesn't inspire me. All right, number two ick is it isn't unique. And what I mean by that is, you know, maybe they show the promo and I'm like, yeah, how is that different from every other palette we've ever seen? How is it different from whatever is really trending and hot right now? Like right now is neutrals, you know, and I could have pulled out several to give you guys an example of how this one is different and it is unique within this same category. But the one that I pulled out to show you why this is what I'm looking for when I say I want something unique and those other ones are not. It is the Wicked Widow Beauty Graveyard Smash palette. This is unique to me. Actually, she is really, really good at coming up with unique color stories. You know, she grabs like grungy tones. She's not afraid to pop in pastels every once in a while, like with the Tea Time palette. She'll put in like this deep orange and like cool and warm tones together. So it's very, very unique. I thought, I don't really know that I have really anything quite like this in my collection. And then I also love her artwork as well. This was just such a unique palette, and I just don't want to see these releases of, yeah, we've seen the same palette. They just keep putting out the same thing over and over again, the same color stories. I mean, Pat McGrath is a perfect example here lately of a brand that just keeps putting out the same thing. It's not unique, it's not inspiring, and it gives me the ick. So that is number 2. All right, number 3 is, it's a brand with a formula I already know I do not like. Okay, so I think we all have these brands that we're just like, I just don't like their formula. It doesn't really matter if they come out with a color story that we weren't expecting. You know, my example is Urban Decay. I don't like their formula. I don't think it's worth the money. I know once they were it, you know, but even when I really think about it, the formula wasn't, it's not that their formula was good and it got bad. It's just, there weren't a lot of good formulas back then. So like with the Metals palette that came out, that yes, it did look better. And I have heard it's a little bit better, but I'm like, I still know when I think about my collection, I always compare, I'm like, but I have this palette, this palette, this palette from these brands. I know their formula is amazing. I don't need to go down the ladder with a formula I don't love. Now, one I'm going to use kind of as an example is Sigma. So I still own, this is the only palette I own now. I did declutter my Cinderella palette. And the thing is the reason why I'm holding on to this one is I do love this color story. Now, I wouldn't just buy a Sigma palette from now on if I love the color story, because I know that the formula is okay, but it's not great. And at this point in my collection, there's no reason to buy palettes that are good, not great, because I have so many great formulas and palettes. So even though I am holding on to this because I purchased this quite a while back, a couple years ago, I wouldn't purchase it again because of the formula. But I just really, really like this color story. But here on out though, I don't buy palettes for color stories. Has to know that either I already know it's a good formula or I'm very curious to try a new formula. No reason to buy brands that you know you don't like their formula. All right, next ick is, it is a palette that does not fill a void in your collection. Now this kind of goes along with being unique, but I really do ask myself, like there are tempting releases all the time where it looks beautiful. And maybe my first instinct is, oh, that's so gorgeous, I need it. But then I think, all right, wait, hold on. Think about your collection. Does that fill any kind of void? Or are you just like repeating color stories you already own? That's kind of icky. So that's what I mean by that. And an example of a palette I did purchase recently that I thought was gonna fill a void in my collection is the Natasha Denona Xenon palette. Now, I am going to use this as an example for a different ick, kind of like as an ick. But for now, the reason why I bought this, and this is so crazy to me, opening up this again and seeing it in here, because it looks so great and smoky. And on me, it pulls every single matte in here pulls blue. I do have a video on this and you can watch it and see what I mean. And I've seen that a lot with this palette. There's some people, looks just like this on their eyes. Other people like me, they all turn blue. But I didn't have an all smoky palette in my collection. I have a big collection. I may have a few, you know, I've got blacks here and there. I've got grays here and there, a charcoal here and there, but I didn't own a smoky, solid smoky palette. So this did fill a void in my collection, or I thought that it did. Now I still kind of have that void. But I also didn't have like an all super cool tone blue moody palette either that this pulls on me. So I'm still cool with keeping it and I really enjoy it. But this I thought was gonna fill that smoky void for me, and that is something that I look for in my purchases. All right, my number 5 ick is it already seems overhyped. This happens all the time with me. This is the contrarian in me that sometimes I have to fight. I was that person growing up that was like, oh, if everyone thinks that's cool, I'm gonna think that's uncool. Like that's kind of my natural instinct. And sometimes I have to fight that and be like, girl, if it's good, like maybe there's a reason everyone's hyping it up. Just try it. So I'm better in that way. But sometimes I do feel like, I mean, I'll give an example. This isn't palettes, but the Giorgio Armani blushes. Oh my gosh. If you are a beauty content girl at all on social media, you know what I'm talking about. So many people got it in PR. It was the best blush of all time. And right there, I got so much ick from that. It was like, I was like, no, that's overhyped. It's all I'm seeing. It's being shoved in my face. So I don't want it anymore. Gave me the ick. So an example of that lately for me has been Odin's Eye. Now, I actually do love Odin's Eye. I have many other palettes. The Soul Mane 2 palette, I love. And I think this one deserved a lot of hype, but it didn't get a ton of hype. Here lately though, with their releases, I feel like they are just so overhyped. This was a pretty unique color story. The ones lately just look like they're kind of like shuffled around from the last one. The packaging kind of looks the same as last time, just with a different color or cover. And they're starting to give me the ick, and I'm passing on all of them. Like I'm passing on the new Christmas collection. I felt so much FOMO not getting last year's Christmas collection. I still think the the Christmas Eve palette looks gorgeous. I may break down and buy it, but probably not, because I've gotten the ick from them. It's been too much lately. It's shoved in the face. The releases have been pretty frequent. The same people show all their stuff all the time. And so I've kind of gotten the ick. All right, number 6 is it's too repetitive. And by that, I just mean that within the palette, there are too many same, not enough variation. It doesn't even have to be a monochromatic palette to fit into this category, because I mean, sometimes you could have everything in it is pretty diverse and contrasting. And then all of a sudden you look and you're like, well, why are there 3 shades in here that look the same? But a palette that I do own that I was just talking about that kind of fits in that is the Xenon palette. As much as I do like this palette, I have to admit that there's a lot of pretty same in here. You don't get a ton of variation. You can get a couple of different looks, but for the most part, these are pretty similar. Now, I think my qualifier for like an exception is if it really is filling a gap, like I said. Like this filled a gap in my collection, and for that reason, I didn't mind some of the really close same. If I already had a lot of these colors, there's no reason to get this. 1, it wouldn't fill the gap, but then 2, it's just so much repetition. So that's what I mean by that. It's funny that this kind of fits in 2 different categories. One is a really positive and one kind of as a negative, but whenever I'm seeing palettes be released now, I want to see variation. I don't want to see same. All right, number 7 ick factor and why I don't purchase a palette is it's too big. And this is funny. I think everyone probably goes through this, that I think when you first start getting into makeup, and then when you first start getting really obsessed with makeup, you see these big palettes with all the pretty colors and you're just like, I want that. Look at how much I can get in that one palette. And I used to think that, and I would see people say this like, ew, it's too big. I don't like that palette, it's too big. And I was like, what are you talking about? You get all these shades. Now that I have a big collection, I understand. And one of it is just maneuvering your palettes around, organization factors. Like if it's too big, it's hard to fit into areas. So there's that. But then there's also just, here's an example that I do own, the Jade palette by Beauty Bay. And you're gonna see how untouched this is. And there's a reason it's too big. Because when I look at this, it is a little bit overwhelming. Now I could focus on this palette and I would know what to do with it, because I'm experienced enough now that like, I know how to do makeup looks and mix and match. But sometimes you just open them up and you're like, I don't want to think about it. And so I don't get this out. That said, I need to get this out this week and use this because it is fun. I do like this formula. I've used it twice, this palette. and I've had it for like a year and a half because it's too big. I no longer buy big Omega palettes like this. If I had one in my collection and like 5 palettes total, totally makes sense. But if you're a collector at all, you don't need a palette this big. Now on the flip side of being too big, another ick is it's too small. You guys, whenever I saw that Natasha Denona was coming out with a 3-pan palette, that bothered me so bad. I don't mind 5-pan that much. And the reason why I'm saying 5-pan is something about 3 and being uneven and being that small was an atrocity for me. I was like, what are you gonna do with 3? I do not like that. 4 is still a little too little for me, but 5 I can deal with. But at this point, I don't need duos. I have some, I never use them. And then quads, I don't use that often. But let me show you 2 examples. I'm like, if you're going to do it this way. So one is Viseart. So like, this is like literally small. Like, not talking about how many pans, it's just little bitty, tiny. But in here you have 8 shades. So I don't mind a palette that's actually physically tiny if you have 8 shades in it, and they're big enough to get your brush in. And honestly, as many palettes as we have, this probably makes more sense to have them this small, the pans, because we hardly ever use up our shadows. So I don't mind a palette that's literally small. And then also, if you're gonna do a quad, like make it luxe, make it nice. Like Il Makiage has really gorgeous packaging. And then, you know, you've got 4 shades in here. Do I use this as often? No. But if I'm going to have a quad, I like that it's nice packaging, although fingerprints. Okay, number 9 ick is it isn't something new. And this is a little bit different from isn't unique. Isn't unique, I meant more color story wise. Isn't something new, I mean more so like, all right, where's your new formulas? Have you not evolved? Are you not doing something different? So say it's a run-of-the-mill kind of mediocre formula brand. If they don't try something new, then I'm not going to mess with them. But here's an example of one that did try something new and I didn't get the ick and I bought it. And that is the Lunar Beauty Siren Sunset palette. So this has multi-chromes in here. First ever that Lunar Beauty decided to do multi-chromes, and that excited me. And I was like, you know what? I really respect a brand that has done pretty well sticking with same, but then they start to lose their luster. Like I didn't buy the one with him and Laura Lee because I was like, I already know the formula, not really new shades in there. I don't want that. But then when I saw, oh, multi-chromes, they've never done that before. I want to test those out. Then I got them and actually really enjoyed them. And now I'm more interested in the brand again. So I feel like a brand can be doing the same thing and you've written them off. But then when they're like, you know what? We revamped, we listened to you, we have a new formula, then that ick factor is gone and you're more willing to purchase and give it a shot. All right, the last one is I hate the packaging. So this does happen often. I'm not the biggest packaging snob in the world, but I'm also not I want all the cheesy, gaudy, ugly, kid-like makeup either. I'm somewhere right in between. But when I see it, if I'm like, I just don't like that packaging. Like if it's way too bulky, if it's way too gimmicky, then I'm probably not gonna want it. A palette that I got recently from Ipsy that gives me the ick packaging wise is this Alamar Cosmetics Destino palette. If you watched my Ipsy video, I talked about how I almost ripped this completely to pieces because I couldn't open it. This would not open. So I was tugging at it. It finally like flicked open and I was like, what is going on here? And then I was like, what's this? Is there more to the palette? And I was trying to pull this off. It was ripping. It took me a good while to figure out that this is a slide this over, slide this here to lock it. And it's just cardboard. This isn't, maybe if this was like really, really nice, luxurious packaging and you had to have a key to open it, that would be kind of annoying too. But I don't know, if you're gonna unlock and lock a palette, it better be precious gems inside, not just this. So yeah, this palette packaging gave me the ick. And if I knew it was like this, I would never purchase it. All right, you guys, that is it. That is all 10 of my ick factors that now prevents me from purchasing a palette. I thank Caitlin and Brittany for giving me the idea for this video, and stay tuned for the part 2 that will be like the things that give me the ick when I'm actually in a palette, in the midst of it, trying it out. And as always, have fun shopping, budget shopping. Bye.